Hey guys, welcome into the TexAgs Rewind. I'm Kaylee Dreyer, and this is presented by Specs, and we're in the Rollo Insurance Studio. Kaylin, what was your favorite part of the show?
My favorite part was Henry Coleman. Such a great guy, had great things to say. But yeah, today on the show we had OB, the Go Hour, Brawny with Recruiting Country, Henry Coleman, obviously, and then Kendall Rogers from D1 Baseball.
I'd have to say my favorite part was Henry Coleman, but I'll also go with Kendall Rogers. I'm excited for baseball this weekend.
This is the Rewind. Check it out.
Typically, when Paul Feinbaum talks about A&M, what do you think? It's not unfavorable. It's not usually favorable either, right? It's like...
Yeah, I think Paul Feinbaum thinks that, and maybe rightly so, that A&M and sports is like going to 31 flavors and ordering vanilla.
Okay.
It's good. It's okay.
But
it's nothing that you get really excited about. I mean, it's good.
Would you guess that he was a yay for Bucky?
Oh, I would.
Or was he like, I don't know?
No, I would guess, because of his background in Alabama and the people then that are telling him stuff, if he doesn't already know, being from Alabama, that he is wholeheartedly endorsing Bucky McMillan.
What do you think Jay Billis is thinking?
Probably gives it a maybe not as hearty of endorsement, but probably is a positive outlook. If nothing else, if for no other reason, I always say, when do you ever hear Jay Billis say something bad about coaches in the media? And he's not a coach, but
he doesn't speak bad about him.
Yeah, they rarely will say anything.
I'm going to tell you what they both think, all right?
But you know what's the old thing? Like your grandma used to tell you, if you can't say something nice, just don't say nothing at all.
Yeah, you should.
So maybe
that should be the way we type as well. Here's Paul Feinbaum on Bucky McMillan. The easy answer is Texas A&M. I think A&M today sits in a much better position with Bucky McMillan to get to a Final Four than it did under Buzz Williams.
I agree with that.
And I know it's easy to pile on Buzz after he left. He was a good coach. Good. He wasn't a great coach.
Vanilla.
He could take you to the tournament. He might win you a game. He wasn't going to get you too much further than that. And I think Bucky McMillan has a chance to completely be an absolute game changer in the SEC.
Yeah, has a chance.
Very favorable review.
So, yeah, we'll take that.
I'm going to tell you a little bit more of what he says.
Okay.
Anybody who's been up and close with Bucky McMillan the last however many years at Mountain Brook, and obviously the last couple years at Sanford, understands what we're saying, and that's okay. I don't need to convince A&M fans because they were more hung up on their athletic director the other day. He was running coaches off. Instead, he went and to me and made one of the best coaching hires I've seen in many, many years.
Well, we'll see. You know, look, I did this. I went back and looked what Sanford was before.
They were horrible.
Oh, I think they had a 20-15 season like in 2015.
Well, I just kind of want to maybe rehash the linebacker board and how it's come together, because if we were on this segment even a month ago and talking about linebackers, and we've talked a lot about how the big board has shuffled and how new names have been added, some names have fallen, some names have risen. But even doing that a month ago, if we were going to go through every linebacker target on the A&M big board back in March, late February, Jason and I could have come on here and talked about every linebacker prospect that we knew of that A&M was really in on.
Yep.
And not once would the name Storm Miller have come up. So whenever we start talking about these names, or I'm going to start talking about some of these names, I think it's important to understand that this is not a comprehensive overview of the linebacker board, but I do think it's an interesting conversation with one in the boat now in Storm Miller, a guy who we didn't talk about at all. Yep. So let's start in-state. Okay, and I also think we need to, I would like to see us have an option on the site to start listing guys as edge players, because Samu Moala is listed as a linebacker. He's more of an edge player, much like Marco Jones, right? We listed Marco Jones as a linebacker last year. He's an edge player, obviously having a lot of success so far in spring ball here. But so when you're counting linebackers in this class, I wouldn't necessarily put Samu Moala amongst that group. Right now, it's just Storm Miller. So beyond that, I think you have to start in the state of Texas, and we're going to look at three names. We're going to look at DeQuivis Beck out of Carthage,
okay,
Tank King out of Port Arthur Memorial, and Calvin Thomas at Cy Ranch. Now, the interesting thing with all of those is I think A&M is down the road at different levels with each of them, and I also think each of them are down the road with A&M at different levels. So what that means is, like, I think at one point, I know at one point Calvin Thomas wasn't even on the radar. And now he's been offered, he's got some family history with Texas A&M. His dad went to school here, has a 20-plus year career now in the military. So there's a lot of things about Texas A&M that he and the family like. Tank King's been on A&M's radar for 3 years now. I think we've been talking about the Port Arthur Memorial linebacker for quite a while. And then DeQuivis Beck is another kid who I think, as the homework was being done in January and February before the dead period was lifted and kids could come back to campus or coaches could go out on the road to visit high schools, I think in that period, when they started really evaluating the entire crop of in-state players, especially the ones they were interested in, I think DeQuivis Beck saw his stock rise in the eyes of Texas A&M. And I also think the flip side has happened. I think Texas A&M has really risen in the eyes of DeQuivis Beck.
How has the last 2-3 weeks been from, there's so many emotions, right? You get to the tournament, you win that first game, you think you're going to win the second one. Unfortunately, you don't. Buzz leaves a little bit later. Just the whole kind of roller coaster of events the last few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, it's been that, a roller coaster. And so for myself, I've kind of reflected on my time here, try to focus on all the good things because, when it gets to the end, you kind of want to maybe focus on what went wrong. I could have done this, I could have done that. But I think I've lived with no regrets. Mm-hmm. And I felt like I've, made an impact on this university, whether that's basketball or whether that's just being in the community. I feel like I've made an impact and I've tried my hardest every single day.
When you think about your time at A&M as a whole, how do you kind of look at this era of Aggie basketball and what you guys did? And did it probably didn't reach your ultimate expectations or goals because you want to win a national championship, right? So, but overall, from where it was when you got here to where you guys left it?
I think, we did an unbelievable job. And for us, so much for us, it might not always be the accolades. I've seen Manny grow in an unbelievable way. I've seen Wade go from a guy who said he was too small. He can't play in the SEC. He's not built for it, to being one of the best that we've seen at this university and one of the best that we've ever seen in the SEC. And so, you've seen all these guys grow as players, but even more importantly, as young men. And so for us, I don't think it was the accolades that, we focused on. Yeah, we wanted to win the SEC. Yeah, we wanted to win a national championship. But I think us growing as young men and getting prepared for the real world is something that I think, we always will wear on our heart.
I think for fans, too, it's sad that you guys are moving on because it's so rare in today's world of college football to have a group stay together. Mm-hmm. We watch Hef grow up. We watch Mo grow up. We watched you grow up. Like it's, as from young men to now men.
Yep, and I think that's just truly special. I owe the credit to Coach Williams, but also the staff. Mm-hmm. I think he surrounded himself with a staff that was, willing to pour into young men, willing to help us in the basketball world, but also in life.
If the schedule weren't as daunting, look, the SEC schedule is going to be ridiculous, but what's ahead after South Carolina, would it make it a little bit more stomachable and easier to believe, all right, maybe there is a chance?
I don't think so, man. Like, I really do. I really don't. I think for me, it's just more like how they play in general. Because here's the thing. If they play to their ability, as we've seen the last 3 games, this is a team that no matter what's on the schedule, they can make it manageable. So, it's really interesting because if you look at where they are from a record standpoint, if they take 2 or 3, or you would like to try to sweep at home, let's just say, just for hypothetical purposes, they sweep this series, all of a sudden the math gets a lot easier. You've got Missouri at home. You got to feel like you're going to sweep that. You're sitting at 9 wins. You got to find 4 wins or 3 to 4 wins out of Arkansas, Texas, LSU, Georgia. All of a sudden, that pathway to the NCAA tournament becomes a lot easier. So I think everything kind of takes care of itself if they play at the level they can play.
We're talking to Kendall Rogers here on TexAgs Live. Caden Sorrell, we knew with him back in the lineup, things would start to look better. I think he's been better than I expected out the jump because, like, I kind of thought it would take him some time to get going. And he's still not 100%, but he's looking great.
Yeah, the one thing I do like about Caden is that it feels like, the first couple of games that we saw him run to first base, it was kind of like, man, he's really toughing this out. Now I feel like when you watch him, it looks like he's a little bit more comfortable. So the good news is the more games he's played, it seems like the hamstring has gotten better and better. So that's a very good sign. I think the other great sign is that, I go back to, I think, when I was texting back and forth with Coach earlier this season, this was probably like the second or third week, is right after he got hurt. It was a couple weeks after he got hurt. And he's like, the frustrating thing about it is because when he gets in the cage, it's like, it's a show, like it's a power show. It's impressive. And so, he was a guy that was, even when he was rehabbing, was still, hitting, looking really impressive in the cage. And so I'm not sure the coaches are really surprised by it, but to see a guy who was on the shelf for essentially a month and a half, 2 months, go out there and do what he's doing is really impressive. And it's a testament to, the hard work he's put in and the elite level of player. I'm not ready to take this leap yet, but, I was talking to a scout over the weekend that texted me, and they were like, hey, I'm not so sure that I don't like Caden Sorrell more than Jay Slavalette as a prospect, and which is really interesting. Like, I'm not ready to go to that level, but it is interesting. Like, it's one of the things you look at for next year's draft, and, like, it doesn't look so crazy.
Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and tell your friends.